Substitute teeth.
Oh, you already have it.
No, I'm good. I understand it enough to not.
Okay.
I mean, it's not. Don't know what.
Yeah, try again if you just need to try. Start over.
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, Zeke Snyder, Harper Snyder, and Sky Hayes. Would you please come forward as our pledge leaders for this evening? Pledge allegiance to the flag.
Please remain standing for a brief moment of silence. Thank you.
Zeke, Harper, and Sky, thank you so much for volunteering. You are certainly welcome to stay for the entirety of the meeting, but I also understand, like, if you just don't have the time and have to get home and get some homework done, feel free to leave. Enjoy your night. Thank you. Oh, you didn't hit that.
Great, item 1B, hold the meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. Item 1C, Janine, roll call.
Mr. Joey here, present. Mr. Richard Bell.
Here.
Ms. Barbara Bowes.
Here.
Mr. Twain Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Jeremy Platt.
Present.
Mr. Sean Williams. Ms. Heather Nash. Here. Mrs. Terry Zitler. Here. And Mr. Eagle Ward.
Thank you. Thank you, Janine. Do we have any public comment?
I did not receive anyone.
Great. Moving on to part 2, academic affairs. Item A, education appreciation days. We've had quite a busy month here. We had paraprofessional appreciation day on the 2nd, National School Librarian Day on the 4th, Assistant Principals Week, the 7th through the 11th, and Administrative Professionals Day on the 25th, on the 23rd. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. I certainly like the addition of recognizing all of our different employees for the work that they do throughout the course of the year. It is often very thankless day to day. So to just take a minute and say, you know, from the board, I think it's a great sentiment, and hopefully we live to recognize that as well. So day in and day out when those things come up, but certainly on an everyday basis as well.
Right, moving on to item B, the graduation date. I believe, Jason, the time has changed slightly.
Yeah, we're proposing to start graduation at 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, June 3rd. It was previously slated for a 7 p.m. start. And the reason behind this was the date of Tuesday, June 3rd was in conflict with CCTI's graduation. Now they are holding their ceremony at 5 p.m. So the idea behind that half hour is to do our best to provide a window of time for families that would like to attend both ceremonies to be able to do so and have a little bit more of a buffer in between. I spoke with CCTI's director. He said that their ceremony is typically about an hour, and I think it's a little after 6 p.m. You figure some pictures, and then you find your car and get up. Hopefully that 7:30 p.m. time frame is you know, is enough for those families, but it's certainly an effort to accommodate those families. And quite frankly, hopefully if the weather is nice, 7:30 in June can often feel a lot nicer than 7 p.m. in June. So, and they'll probably, our graduates will probably end with the lights on in the stadium, which could make for some fantastic pictures as well. So,
Well, having attended the last couple of years of graduation, the sun won't be shining directly in our eyes either, so that's a good thing.
Right, so to be clear, graduation is Tuesday, June 3rd, now at 7:30 p.m. And we'll be having the bus parade that started during COVID has become extremely popular. June 2nd,
That's the
at 6
place.
p.m., correct?
well, one other item is, you know, that conflict that arose. We will make sure that does not happen in the future. I've already spoken with Director of CCTI and the Carter County Superintendents to let's just do a better job of getting on the same page. And that's nobody's fault, quite frankly. But we should be able to kind of identify those dates in the, you know, really around this time for the following year. So if any conflicts land, we should know that we have something that we have to work through now rather than this time next year, if that makes sense. So.
Great. The information, moving on to item C, the summer credit recovery program. Jason?
So you see it's high school summer credit recovery program being held that second half of June. These are for students who would not have earned the credit in the courses that they were and need set credits in order to stay on pace for graduation. So we'll be looking for approval from those dates. Obviously, we staff that with a teacher to monitor the progress of said students, and that's, you know, an important piece of making sure that we do everything we can to provide every opportunity for students to, hey, everybody has a slip up every once in a while, so we want to make sure that those students have the opportunity to stay on track.
Any questions from the board? Moving on to item E, summer camps.
I'm going to turn that over to Gretchen Laviolette. And Aaron, sorry, Aaron.
That's okay. Yeah, right. So we're having a summer math and reading camp at the elementary again this summer. Thankfully, we have the funds to do that. And it's basically every 2 weeks of practice and remediation or reading, practice remediation and math. It's not a traditional classroom setting, and there's some fun activities for the kids. This year we are running it 5 days rather than 4 days. In the past, we've done it Monday through Thursday, but we are doing it Monday through Friday. This year, teachers and paraprofessionals teaching the camps, and we're going to be doing a bit more assessment just to make sure the kids get something before they leave from the beginning to the end of the 2 weeks. So typically, you know, we'll look at the students that receive some remediation during the year first. Kids will contact their parents to see if they're interested in attending the camp. Then we'll open up to other students in the buildings. Typically, it's for students that are in grades 1 to 4. Perfect. Any questions on the summer camps? You can see the dates there, and the times are listed on our report.
Thank you, Terry. On item E, Title I family engagement.
Yeah, so this is in its infancy, but we do have we have about $6,000 remaining in our Title I family engagement funds, which have to be spent in that capacity. So very early on, we do not know exactly what this is going to look like yet, but I'm gonna ask Mr. Sutherland to address this and talk about what some ideas are at this point in time.
Yeah, thank you. So we have this idea about offering parents a free program where they got on at Parents University, but it's really just some tips and suggestions on how to help your students through basic things, definitely through school and at home, and you know, all kinds of different areas. There's no handbook on how to be a parent, and we're just providing some resources within the school in order to do that. And if you recall, a number of years ago, we were talking about the elementary center. We really wanted it to be a hub and to be able to have it provide many offerings to kids, parents, and community members. So we just thought, this is a way that we could bring parents in. We can educate them on certain topics. We'll offer them snacks and some food. We'll offer childcare for the kids that are in our school. We'll also offer childcare for any siblings that they may have. So that would keep parents from being able to come in because they have young kids at home, they have kids at home, and they can leave them at home. So we'll have some activities for those kids to do while the parents are engaging and learning with people in our staff. We also thought about offering some brief kind of in-service professional development with offerings around the community. So we're trying to get some new community resources involved as well. Like Mr. Miller said, it is in its infancy stages. Just started planting the seeds and looking for people in the building who might be interested in participating in this endeavor. We have a couple of people that are interested already. We're hoping to have at least one session at the end of May, after school hours, of course, and then potentially having a couple offerings throughout the summer. Like Mr. Moser said, there's a budget for it at this point, so we'll look at what that is and then try and map out how many scheduled ones we have this summer. I had a very captive audience last week where we had the kindergarten parent luncheon. So while parents were getting ready to leave, I did address all the kindergarten parents, and I talked a little bit about Champion. A couple of parents that showed some interest at that point. Initially, we're going to offer it for parents for grades K-2. Okay, so those parents have kids that are in kindergarten, first or second grade. We'll open it to them first. And Mr. Moser's kind of given me a goal to be able to try and host about 20 families. That would be great if we were able to host. So I will provide more information to the board as it comes in and as we develop the program. Like I said, it's definitely its infancy stages, but it's super exciting. And I hope that a lot of people will take advantage of the program. Any questions?
Not a question per se. I think it sounds like a great idea, and I think one of the most important things you can do as you get this together is to make sure that the parents are reminded time and again that this program is occurring. At the end of the school year, sports and everything, but some parents forget and they regret that they didn't get a chance to participate in such a program. So I would just say keep the reminders going, even if it's just emails. Make sure that they get them.
Good suggestion.
Other questions from the board? Thanks, Aaron. Sounds like great plan. Moving on to item F. The IU has submitted to us their facilities plan approval, which will happen at the voting meeting. We all had a chance to look at it. Were there any comments or questions? The IU's plan. Moving on to item G. We're looking to purchase more of a ready curriculum for the next school year, assuming that iReady is working rather well.
Yeah, I will turn this item over to Mrs. Bobby. She's been working through this.
Yes, thank you. So as Ms. Beers just alluded to, we are looking to expand the usage of iReady. As you know, it had been adopted 2 school years ago for the elementary level for grades K-5. We need to continue our improvement in math scores, especially at the 6th grade level. So we thought it would just be a nice flow as the current 5th graders would have been using it for the last 2 years. So it would transition nicely or help them transition nicely into the middle school to continue it in 6th grade. As of now, I don't necessarily expect it to go further than that. There is always that possibility, but want to look at getting a very robust program then for 7 through 12, but it would probably be like Algebra 2 geometry, whichever one you want to say is last of the 2 for us, it's geometry, maybe into pre-calculus, but at least get it again, a nice robust program that will kind of flow nicely out of iReady. So that would be coming down the road, not necessarily for the well, maybe for the 26-27 school year would be the goal. But to get back to this point, we're looking to implement iReady in grade 6. We are seeing nice improvement at the elementary level. The students are showing a lot of growth during the different benchmarks that occur from fall to winter and then winter to spring. So again, we want to keep that going at the middle school level.
And I would assume that the sixth grade teachers have, been informed and looked it over and agreed with everything.
They have been informed, yes, as the different transitions have been going on with the middle school teachers. Those that are going to be teaching sixth grade math, they're aware of that and aware of the resource that's going to be used. Part of this quote does include professional development. So we're looking to have at least, or I should say at least, one of those 3 days at the end of this school year. And that will include any of the elementary teachers, the new elementary teachers who are transitioning from the middle school, so that they can at least leave with a little bit of the knowledge of how the program works, should they choose to do any preparation over the summer. And then we will have one more day at the beginning of next school year during the in-service days, and then another day sometime throughout the year.
I kind of figured you had that covered. I just wanted people to hear it.
I do appreciate that. I like the little props that you give.
There's a level of consistency that we're striving for. Sixth grade is a very difficult transition year for students when they get anywhere, anytime you go from, whether it's fifth grade, sixth grade, or seventh grade, and it depends on the structure of the school district, coming into a middle school or junior high setting, that is a difficult transitional year. This provides one less transitional piece for students where they are already familiar. We're seeing success in K through 5 with iReady. Teachers have worked very hard, but hearing them in meetings, they are thankful for the work they've put in. Quite frankly, those K through 5 teachers. We also know that sixth grade is a major drop off, not only across the state in sixth grade scores, but also exposes our greatest weakness in a math continuum as well. I believe we're somewhere around 25% proficient in advanced in math in sixth grade last year. We need to really hit that consistency and coherency to make sure that students can be as successful as they possibly can be. And one of the ways to do that is making sure that we have an absolutely guaranteed and viable curriculum and teachers who are professionally developed in said framework.
Quick question. When this curriculum associates gives the instruction of professional learning to our teachers, do they do it in person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I was reading the last clauses of their contract, and it basically says they prefer to do them in person. However, if they don't have somebody nearby, they'll do them virtually. And I'm like, if we're going to pay them, let's get them here to teach them.
Right, yeah, especially while some things can somewhat work virtually, those types of trainings, when you're learning to use different resources and so on, are not ideal.
I agree.
Yes, so we will definitely be holding those in person. Thank you. One other thing that I wanted to add is Mr. Roser was talking that dawned on me. I know one of the concerns that we were hearing of the potential idea of moving it up to the middle school level was that the iReady platform is a bit elementary-like. And so there was concern that it would not be as mature as the sixth graders would like to be. iReady must have been hearing that complaint elsewhere because they did just roll out a new middle school platform that addresses exactly that. So it will look a bit different for the sixth graders than what they saw at the elementary level, again, just to make it more mature and appropriate for their age level.
It's still Common Core math?
Yes, it's the idea of taking Common Core skills, or to me, the idea of Common Core is essentially giving students the ability to solve certain or different problems in a variety of methods. And so that is one thing that iReady does. It provides them, again, options for you could do it this way, or you could do it this way, or you could do it this way. With the goal being that the student is able to choose one method that they are most comfortable with and run with that, not that they need to be able to use, all of the methods. So from that standpoint, I would say, yes, it is.
Sounds a little bit better than Common Core, the fact that they don't have to use that 16,000 step method to get to, from A to Z.
Right.
That would be very nice.
But they can if they're more comfortable.
If that's
doing it.
Right.
I think that's how it's confusing.
Right, but if that's their choice, they can do it.
But is one of the methods that's offered traditional math technique that most older folks would be?
Yes, but I also feel like that could be open to interpretation of what is traditional. I think what we would all consider to be traditional, yes. But yes, it will have those other options as well. And I know that especially at the young ages that can be confusing. Even the high schoolers used to get upset with me, and why do I have to learn, 2 different ways to do this? And they couldn't always wrap their head around it so that you can pick the one that works best for you.
I would say one of the strengths of every curricular resource is going to have strengths and weaknesses. I would say that one of the strengths of iReady as a curricular resource is that it is very, very focused on the conceptualization of mathematics. And so it is not based upon solely memorizing facts, there are ways to supplement, because I think that's its weakness, but you can supplement iReady with other ways, with some other resources to get this, the kind of what is referred to sometimes as drill and kill, that idea of like really practice. Because what we know is that 6th grade scores, the reason why they drop across the state, quite frankly, is because the 6th grade math tests transitions, the SSAs transition from really truly assessing fact fluency to conceptual mathematical ideas. And if students have only learned through that hardcore practice day in and day out, or if they haven't learned that, all of a sudden it's going to become exposed. That's why you see a major drop across the state and here from 5th grade to 6th grade. If there's a chart of standards that are up there, literally half of them are tested 3 through 5, and the other half are not, and then it flips. So in 6th grade, if you continue to not go through that discourse-based conceptual learning of math, which is really pre-algebraic thought and patterns, and you're practicing fact fluency, every minute you're doing that, you're actually losing a minute of what is assessed and what students are supposed to be held accountable for at the end of 6th grade. And then that compounds over time. So it's literally not just it is across the state that this is the problem. The test shifts drastically. And the scores show that our students, a lot of times, and I'll just be quite frank, I was great at the memorization of skills. And so I was awesome until I hit Algebra 1. I was like, oh, okay. Then I hit Algebra 2, and I was like, nah, check out. I'm going to go with English. But it was truly because I can number sense. I have, and I could apply, I could do a lot of calculations. But personally, I did not know what those calculations actually meant. And so when the math went into that higher level order of thinking, I struggled when I was presented challenges because I had not learned it that way at all. So I know there are probably a lot of people in my age range who say the same thing, like algebra, I don't understand. And Mrs. Laviolette gets quite upset with me as a former math teacher when I have these conversations where I was like, I'm all right. But the reality is I do use algebraic thinking all the time. I just had to take a circuitous route to understand the conceptualization of what I was doing.
Well, I'm 68 and I can still remember my times tables. So.
Me too.
I'm sure.
I have to say, I got a little bit frustrated this year when working with my daughter on division. Division is so simple. You sit down, you look at it, and you get the remainder, even all that stuff. It's all good. But then I looked at the way that the teacher is teaching it, and I'm like, what? And so I had to learn it. I mean, thankfully I picked it up. I mean, I watched the teacher provided a video, and I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, I can get this. But I'm like, but this is much faster. So if the new vision is for the kid to be able to choose which way they learn, that could help the parents at home or grandparents that might be teaching the kid, because they might know how to do it the old-fashioned way, or they might be young enough to know the Common Core way. So that's great. I mean, as long as the result is, the answer is the same as what's supposed to be, that's all that matters.
I know when Common Core was first rolled out, my sister's kids were that age, and my sister said that the tests and the homework tested that you were using the Common Core technique. It didn't matter if you got the right answer. If you didn't follow the technique, your kid was going to fail the homework or fail the exam. So it's good that now they shifted away from that. It doesn't matter what route the child chooses. If they get the right answer, they got the right answer. So basically, you're saying we won't get notices saying, Mrs. Sittler, please stop helping so-and-so lunch. Did that happen? Oh, yeah. You're confusing the child, right? All right, other questions for Gretchen, probably. Okay, item H, purchase of 40 student licenses for Gold Finish. I think this is new. I think we've had this before.
Yeah, this is, I'm not well versed in this. This is the pre-K counts. I don't know if Mr. Sutherland, if you have more information about this, I do know that it becomes highly recommended.
Yeah, so in the pre-K counts program, we are assessing 3 and 4-year-olds and just readiness and as with the preparing kindergarten. And really, we were using an outdated form of assessment. So we did ask the instructor to kind of look at a couple of different programs. We had met with Michelle Hand, representative from the state, and then this one was recommended. So the teacher did take a look at and had a couple of calls with some companies about looking at different forms of assessment. This was the form of assessment that her and I kind of looked at and felt that would be beneficial to use in the classroom. 40 licenses are for the 20 students in the morning and 20 students in the pre-K counts program. If you look at the summary of the quote, there's also some professional development provided in there. That was important to us because it will be the first time that the teacher will be using that. So we are looking to use an updated form of assessment for the pre-K count students.
And just a reminder, pre-K counts budget wise comes in as a grant, and all of those funds must be spent distinctly on pre-K counts program. So that's kind of an important framework to understand that we can't decide to do something differently with that.
I'll just add one thing, and maybe Mr. Sessions has had a conversation with Ms. Hoppus, the pre-K teacher, but I know within the last few days, she was exploring perhaps other options. So there is a chance that this might not make it to the voting meeting later this month. She is exploring options, but we at least wanted to have it on there just in case this is the direction she decides to go. But then this would be, no matter what, the program would be put in place for the next school year. So we do still have some time to get that done.
Other questions on this purchase, potential purchase? Great, hearing none. Any public comment on the academic affairs committee? Hearing none, we will move on to part 3, policy. First reading policies. Policy 005, Barb had emailed Jason and me some time ago about kind of confusing things in that policy.
Yeah, it was fixed.
Yep.
Yes.
And we,
Right, I read through it.
So, that's why that's on there. Jason, do you want to talk about therapy?
I know very little about therapy, guys. I'm sure that this Alec will be able to chime in. I know it's been.
You like streets?
Yes, we looked at the policy that we had and getting to know him and our process and, living it for a year. There are certain things that we decided we should refine and we did. And I have to say, it's been a very successful year. He's just a joy. And I really did expect, maybe some more problems, issues, misgivings. We were quite lucky. And I think coupled with the fact that we had some very good handlers that we, pretty much avoided a lot of problems. So it was great. So we think that we have this wired pretty tight now. We will always return to it and, refine it and fine tune it. Every time we have issues, what we'd like to do is have another training to invite more handlers to be involved in this program and to be more advanced with it, including having more presence in some emotional support classrooms.
Now, I had sent a correction on that, but it does not look a typo.
Yeah, I saw that email.
It's not 10.
Hearing no questions, I think I'll call upon Gretchen to talk about the EI policy, which is timely because I was actually just talking with Jason about it.
He seems to usually run away anytime I bring a topic up. But he has given the okay to move ahead. This is something that I have been wanting to do for probably about a year now, and just for various reasons, it's kind of put on hold. But I do think it's time for us to look to adopt an AI policy. So the one that I am proposing is based off of 2 sample policies, PSBAs, as well as one that we received from Sweet Stevens, Katz, and Williams. And I had a session with them at the beginning of this school year where it was everybody within our IU, and Sweet Stevens is kind of walk through the difference between their policy and PSBA's and why they were recommending differences, in theirs versus the PSBA's. So I really took the 2 and kind of melded them into this one, taking what I thought was best for us to be addressing. So some of the key things that I want to point out is, first of all, that we will be providing instruction to the students. So I met with Ms. Wall, our director, our department chair for the business department, who I've asked to look at the curriculum within all of our computer classes. I'll say K to 12, though I don't anticipate that we're introducing AI to kindergartners. But anyway, at least at the elementary level, the upper grades, and then throughout middle school and throughout high school, be doing some instruction on appropriate use of AI. And so she and her team of computer teachers are going to work on that. We will also be, I'll say, encouraging the teachers to use it. However, I'll also use that term lightly or loosely, that it's going to be completely up to them. They certainly do not need to use it at all. But again, we'll provide them with some tools so that they can. Along those lines, providing professional development at the beginning of next school year, looking to have 2 different sessions for the teachers. One in which will be how they can be utilizing it, I'll say behind the scenes in their own planning and so on, to assist with some everyday tasks that might be able to go a little bit quicker. But then the second session will be on utilizing it with students. Along those lines, you'll see that there's kind of a scale that's provided in there. Again, encouraging teachers to utilize that. Some will use a red light type idea or stoplight idea of red, meaning absolutely no use of AI for a project that they're giving to the students. Yellow, there's some room for the use of it, and then green. I don't want to say full-fledged use, full-fledged to the extent that's appropriate. And then, I think that was everything. At least there's a lot more in there, but kind of the key ideas of what I would say is being focused on. We know that it's out there. We know that the students are probably already utilizing it, whether it's, for school work or just kind of general use. So we want to provide them with the proper tools, and also to be cognizant of not everything they see is real. So it's not just about how to properly use it within classes and so on, but also just how to be analyzing what they might see in front of them. To have an understanding of, again, is what they're being presented something that is real, or could it have been AI produced?
I have a question.
Yes.
For grading student work, it says approved AI websites and applications may be used to assist with the grading of student work, but final decision is basically on the teacher. How would a teacher use that to grade work?
One of the thoughts that I have is running it, and this is me kind of going through with those are horrible, but for an English teacher perhaps, and running an essay through, and some have been doing this, students have been doing this for years using Grammarly. It'll at least go through and kind of check the punctuation.
Grammarly is AI.
It is, yes, and it's something again that has been.
And it's not always great.
No, but it's been used for years, and so at least when you're checking the grammar, or not the grammar aspect, but the punctuation aspect of essays. But then, and to me, that's kind of the more tedious work. But then the teacher sitting down and reading it more so for its context of what's written in the essay, and kind of providing the grading on that part of it. I'm trying to think if there are other things there are
AI tools that can detect if an essay is written by AI.
Yes.
By another AI. Yes.
Yes.
So the Terminator's checking the Terminator to see if everything's okay.
Honestly, I've used things like that. Well, one time in particular, but I used a couple of different platforms. I never know that I came across one that was correct, because one would say, yes, it looked like a good percentage of it was, and then another one would say, no, that looks like it could all be human risk.
Well, most teachers know their students.
Yes,
I mean, so they're gonna see if Joy decided to write something that didn't seem Joy-like. You
Right.
know, that they're gonna
Yeah.
run that through and take a check, so.
Absolutely. But I'm glad that you brought that up, Ms. Sidler, because I want to emphasize the fact that while yes, we will be showing teachers what tools they can use, it is meant to just get the basics done. The absolutely final grade needs to be coming from the teacher. Yes, thank you.
I don't like it at all. Don't like all this AI.
It's coming.
And that's, I certainly respect where you're coming from on it. Like again, we can't be turning a blind eye to it because it is here, it is being used. I met with, she's not here, but one of our mothers that often attends, Carrie Vale. And she sat in on the comp plan discussions. I met with her because she has an extremely strong background in technology. That's her career. And we talked about it. And she told me about a project that she needed to do for work that she said she was certain it was intended that she was to use AI to complete it just because of the short time frame that she had to get it completed. So it's not just, you know, there are jobs that are essentially requesting it to be used. So we want, whether we agree with it or not, we want to be preparing our students for that.
And I think about the only reason we should be using AI is to verify that the kids aren't plagiarizing something.
If we don't have a policy for AI, then it'll be the Wild West. So we
Correct.
need a
No,
policy.
no, you're right, Joy. Well, I still don't like it.
Yeah, well, I got to suck up Common Core.
All right, great, so, I think moving on, item B is second reading and final approval of policies. We've all seen those. Have any new questions arisen?
If I can chime in, I'm sorry, on these though, because I know something that was brought up, I think it was the workshop for these first readings. And again, I believe it was by Ms. Vale, now that I mentioned her, was the idea that address and phone number were not included in terms of personal information that is, you know, is not being protected, I guess I want to say. The reason that it's not, most policies use the legal definition for public information, and address and phone number were not included in that because of the fact that it is essentially public record. And again, I reached out to Sweet Stevens, Katz and Williams, and that was the response that Mark Walls gave, saying that it's probably going back as, you know, far as phone books being popular, and that you can just very easily look up what is Mr. Blash's address and phone number. He said we could certainly put it in there. It doesn't hurt. However, we can only protect that data so far. We can protect it within our own realm of the data, but we can't protect the fact that, again, it is public record and out there for anybody else. So I did want to throw that out there. If you want us to add it in, you
You
can
can just do
that.
a Google search on anybody.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Right. Now, again, are you going to find it in Power School from the Heighton School District? No, because.
No,
we have
you're
that
gonna find it
protected.
from White Pages or.
Yes, exactly. So again, if you want that put in there, we will gladly add it in, but that's why it's not included as of now.
Great. Hearing no questions or comments from the board. Is there any public comment on the policy committee at this time?
From an educator's perspective, AI, one thing that you're able to do is when you have different learning levels, you're able to use AI to adapt a document or adapt text to someone that reads at a lower level, and do that instantly, and adapt content to a lower, like a different learning level, and do that instantly using AI. So you're able to like differentiate your instruction according to the levels that may exist in your classroom, do that almost instantly.
It's interesting.
Thank you.
Any public comment? Hearing none, part 4, the finance committee, Order King, Gordon and the company. Contract to carry on with them, I believe they are the ones that have been doing the audits. And, I don't know, were there any comments on that contract?
You seem to be doing a good job as well.
It's important to note that this is the sole bid that we received for this. This is
Yes, but
sole
they've
proposal.
also been very good.
And they have been very good. They've been very timely from my understanding. And sort
Well-
of this year in terms of when we provided them things and they were
Right.
done. This is a problem for a lot of districts, honestly, we're falling behind.
Well, it's also the fact that like this, now I noticed with us, especially the charter schools, they don't get their stuff until August, so we can reconcile. Well, how do you get stuff ready for the auditor if you can't reconcile the previous year? So, I mean, it's not just the district, it's getting the final bills and even like with grants. Sometimes they don't pay when they should. And you still have to include that revenue because it's for the previous year.
A lot of priorities involved.
But I would actually like to see the audit report before March, but a lot of that has to do with, the business office has to wait until the information comes in so they can reconcile it. And get it to the audit.
And the auditor has to go through their work.
Right,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's a lot.
Yes.
Do you have questions on this contract? None, moving on to the revenue projections. Jason and Matt were able to project the revenues, but not the expenditures at this time, so we have only the.
Well, sort of project revenues.
Yes, projecting,
Yeah,
projecting revenues.
I
Not
guess.
ironclad.
I guess, correct.
We try to make it as much of an educated guess as possible, and this is something that can refine over time. Put together kind of an overview here of sources of revenue, first of all. I think this is good for public understanding. What you see in front of you demonstrates the percentages from where our actual revenues come from historically. And so in our projections here, we're looking at 1.4% come from federal funds in these projections.
Yeah, because we're back to not having
No ESSERs.
ESSER.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So kind of going back in
And this is
time.
the year I've been most scared about.
Yes. State revenues, about 48%, and then local revenues count for 50.6%. So you see, like, as we go through here, there's really three sources of revenues that we look at from a broad scope, but we actually are providing a pretty high level of detail here as we look at these projections, and we'll kind of go through the lines. So forgive me if it gets somewhat long-winded. It's kind of critically important. What I will do is point out the areas that have the potential for the greatest discrepancy, given factors that we have absolutely no control over. So that's kind of important to.
I have a question for you on this.
Yes.
Have you noticed, and I realize there's no guarantee it's going to continue at the level that it did, with the state funding, with the added funding that they're giving, has that percentage gone up?
It certainly would have, the state would have, I'm sure of it. I don't know what that is, or, yeah, it would have, because we would have had more money.
Well, yeah, we got an
All
extra
the new funding
almost $2
coming,
million.
$2 million, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, because we haven't seen it presented this way before, so that's why I'm
Sure.
asking.
And I can certainly put this together historically as well. This is, it's pretty simple to come up with a graph like this.
Because I know the local has always been over 50%. So I just don't remember, and it might be in previous.
I guess because it was actually higher than something.
Well, yeah.
The proportion gets thrown off when you get new state funding. Yeah. So we'll look at all three sources independently. If you look at projected local revenue, this is the one that we can actually, in many ways, predict the best because it's what we actually exercise the most control over. I'll note some discrepancies. As I said, you see the current real estate tax, which is the heftiest out of our local revenue. We're projecting 1.54% difference. This is a figure budgeted at 94.4% collection rate with no tax increases and no.
It's usually collected at a higher rate.
Yes. And no consideration for two large assessment appeals that are out there that, could, depending upon how it lands, be $15,000-$20,000 each if it goes really sideways for us. But yes, this could go up because again, we have it collecting at around 96-97%, which is extremely high. So being fairly conservative there, that could certainly go up. The others, you can see going down, the kind of the reason why they're based on more actuals, that historical actuals, in terms of the delinquent real estate. And so your 6411, 6420, and 6441, they're based on more historical actuals versus historical budgeted proposals. So we're kind of going by the numbers that will actually come in. The next slide, projected local revenues continue.
So just a comment by budgeting or approximating a 94% collection rate, you're making $1.1 million.
For what?
That first figure, $18.5 million.
Yeah.
That's a collection rate of 94%. The collection rate were magically 100%, it would be $1.1 million more. Just putting that out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, 6%, 5%. On the next slide, the ones that, again, based on actuals there, you can see your 6451 and your 6452. So we budgeted according to what they've actually looked like a little bit more. 6510, I highlighted there because we feel like this is really dependent upon interest rates, but we feel like this could be an area where we see a larger increase. This is still a conservative estimate. This probably could be somewhere around $1 million, depending upon where interest rates are, where they stay, so on and so forth. So that's one that's kind of up in the air because the external markets really dictate what our interest rates are, and what we're yielding on those investments.
Well, yeah, and that's where it says doing much better than historically. A lot of that has to do with the higher interest rate.
Yes.
But also the millions of dollars that influxed in with federal that's sitting
That was
there
sitting there
collecting
yielding
interest.
Correct. Yes. You see a pretty significant adjustment to rentals, a drop of 68.62%. But again, that is based on actuals. 6920, that is likely to be different than the 55,000. What that is really tied to healthcare agreements and services. So depending upon what we move forward with, that number could change. Although it's probably not likely to, it's going to be around the 100,000 mark, I would guess. And we'll be able to update that in real time, relatively soon. And then you see refunds of a prior year, actual stay flat, so we actually adjusted that according to that.
And the receipts from other LEAs, is that just for what we provide in the building?
It's, I believe Matt is on. Matt, can you answer that? I believe that's more about invoicing for transportation to other districts.
Oh, okay.
Yep, correct. Yep, that's correct. I believe it's called start transportation.
Sorry.
I think you said that's correct.
Yes.
So we'll roll with it. Jason was correct. And that is why I think.
Yes, that's correct. It's start transportation.
Obviously, those account codes are not, not everything is always obvious. You see the estimated total local revenues at about $24.7 million with some room to move. If we move on, we'll see the projected state revenue. Again, we have very little control over this. And we have to pass a budget before this will be finalized, more than likely, right? So the basic ed funding formula, that is hold harmless. Based on our PIMS data, based on the governor's proposed budget, you see a slight increase with, less than a 1% increase. You could see a little bit more out of that.
That's the safe bet, though.
That's the safe bet. And honestly, if you see more new funding, it's probably not going to go to the basic ed funding formula because that is hold harmless. Once it's added to that, right now the law says can't dip below that proportion that is delivered to revenue. So you kind of have to. This is one thing you always do go flat with.
It's the ready to learn where you're safe.
Yes. Yes. The others, not a big difference. Special ed school age, you do see a 9% increase. Again, this is based upon a conservative estimate of the governor's proposed budget and based on our PIMS data. Again, pre-K accounts, that's pretty solidified. And again, that's money in, money out, all three pre-K accounts. Pupil transportation, you see a 4% increase. That is based on the index going up. You'll see 7320. That's a pretty big line item there, $877,000 of revenue. That is tied to PlanCon reimbursement on eligible debt service that we pay that is PlanCon approved. Of course, PlanCon kind of disappeared. They keep saying, no, not this year again, not this year again, not this year again. We probably will not see that in the foreseeable future. But we do have some outstanding debt, obviously, that we get reimbursed on that was previously approved. If 7340 changes, and it is likely to, that is that state property tax reduction, that number could go up, but it wouldn't actually help our revenues because if that number goes up, it's going to come away from our local property tax. So it's a rebate to taxpayers.
Yeah, but it saves us.
That actually.
No, I mean, as an individual.
As an individual, yes. Yes, individual taxpayers, absolutely. But it doesn't have an impact. If that number goes up, doesn't really impact the district's budget. PCCD, school safety and security, that is kind of a shot in the dark at this point in time because it is unknown. We're likely to start getting some more information about that over the next month or two. Whether we get that information prior to, we'll probably have a better idea, but still not a final idea until the final budget is done, quite honestly. But we'll continue to make adjustments and read the tea leaves.
Well, it's because it's a grant, so.
Yeah, but it's also state allocated to the budget. So when when the first big one came out, I think it's 3-4.
You mean for the state budget?
Yeah, it's tied, it was part of the omnibus bill at the state budget level, so, yeah. 7505, that's the big one. So you see the percent difference is based upon comparing against previous actuals. And you know that last year you had an influx in this category. So this is based on the governor's proposed budget, but it is also conservative from this year's actuals. So the governor's proposal for the hike actually includes probably, it does include almost $2.1 million in revenue under the Ready to Learn block grant.
But the legislature has a say in that.
Absolutely, that's the proposed budget. So we are conservatively estimating in new monies, you'll see about $400,000 less than what the governor's proposing. It would not shock me if it ended up at 1.7. It also would not shock me if we ended up at almost 2.1. I think that funding is really.
But the better shot.
I actually probably believe it'll be somewhere above the 1.7, but not. Yeah.
But I mean, it would be a nicer shot.
It would be great. It'd be fantastic. It was 2.1 for us. And again, this is tied to how the state or how the Commonwealth is addressing the fair funding for public schools, through that court case that came out.
Yeah, where it was unconstitutional
Yeah.
the way they fund the schools.
Yeah, so, 78-10 and 78-20, those are based, and it could change a little bit, but if they change, it actually means our cost of personnel is changing too. So our state share of social security and Medicare and then state share of retirement and contributions to PSERS, if that were to go up, it means our salaries are going up as well. If this revenue were to go down, it actually means our expenditures are going down as well. So the salaries, at this point in time, this includes everybody who is currently employed in the district with their anticipated increase to salary for next year as well. Does that make sense? So if this revenue goes down in future slides, it's because we know we have a few retirees, and we hire at a lower salary. So your share goes down, but so do your expenditures. Which leaves you with $23.4 million in projected revenue from the state. The last source of revenue is federal revenue, and this is, we're anticipating less. And see the percentages actually play out. But here are the proposed budgets for titles 1, 2, and 4, and then medical assistance reimbursement, which is access. And you'll see the $6,000 in the proposed budget is based on actuals and hasn't been included. You do see a significant drop in both Title I and Title II, and then a drop again with Title IV.
Yeah, I'm wondering why it's budgeted that way.
We are anticipating, because of new census data, and new collection, some figures that they're going through. You can no longer use, just a straight up calculation of your free and reduced lunch, because you can't collect free and reduced lunch forms and count them for this information anymore.
Okay.
So it's
But
become
don't we have free and reduced lunch based on,
for everybody right now.
right, but I mean, it's based on, what the state data is for income levels.
Yes. And there is talk about that actually becoming a different threshold as well. Because right now, I believe it's 25%. It used to be 40% around those numbers. And there's actually discussion right now of raising the threshold to 60% to qualify for CEP. If it had 60%, we would not even qualify for free and reduced lunch.
Right. Even though we use BHA, we include them in, okay.
Right.
So free and reduced lunch, I mean, not free, but everybody being free can go away next year.
Exactly.
Okay.
There is that potential. If that legislation were to move.
Gotcha.
We don't know yet. I
Is
don't
it
know.
stuck in committee right now?
It is, I don't even know that it's, I'm pretty sure it's in committee and conversation. So I don't even know.
So it's not even discussed as best yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could see some increases to federal revenues, but I would not think that they are going to be much. Likewise, we could probably see some decreases.
Yeah, I was wondering why the decrease was significant.
I believe the real numbers usually get released in late April or early May, so I would hope that we'll be able to give you a better update at that point in time.
Because you said based on released amounts, so I wasn't sure if that's going by what's been released to us so far this year.
It's released according to what our percentages actually look like.
All right, okay, gotcha, all right.
Yeah. But again, we should be able to actually provide a better update on this over the next month. So once again, you just look at the overview. Total, you look at local revenues, state revenues, and federal revenues combined, and we're looking at estimated total revenues of 48.8. Please recall, we said probably around 49.1. That was a rough ballpark originally, a lot better.
It's pretty close.
Better idea of expenditures as we get to crystallize. At the next meeting, we'll be able to give you at least an overview of anticipated expenditures and compare it against our total revenues. Please remember, there's probably $300,000 somewhere in there in revenues that we're likely to see depending upon services. Some additional here and there. And then it's a game of managing the budget throughout the fiscal year where you're keeping an eye on your actual expenditures and being very responsible and making decisions that are in the best interest of the district going forward, not just within them. Any questions on the revenues? I want to thank Matt Lentz for the work. I want to thank and for helping me get the information to get putting this together. We do feel pretty confident that this is fairly accurate at this point in time, as accurate as it can be. It is fairly conservative. I would not think it could dip below this. I think if anything, it would be higher than this.
So, and we discussed this at the last meeting too. So there unequivocally will be no tax increase this year. And based on,
Well, we don't have a budget yet.
well, no, we don't, but I mean, that's pretty clear to me. And then based on our current year budget, it appears to me that we're going to be in very good financial shape. In fact, we are in very good financial shape. And we should be seriously looking at what our expenditures are anticipated to be. And it's great to have a really nice fund balance. And I really like having a good fund balance. It makes that interest income line item higher. But by the same token, if we've got a huge, think about it, we spend $4 million a month here, give or take. Now, our budget starts on July 1. At the end of August, revenue's coming in because people pay their taxes early, get that 2% discount. They don't want to pay that 10% penalty. But, and I don't blame them. I'm kind of in that group too, but 2% really should be more than 2%. So if we spend $4 million a month, just say July, August, September, 3 months, keeping 12 million in reserves is a really good idea until the revenue starts coming in at a heavy line item, because we do collect most of our revenue early in the year. So I'm just looking at it, and I'll be looking at paying a lot more attention once the expenditure line items come in on the estimations. But I see no reason we can't do two particular things in this coming year's budget. Number one, a solid maintenance program for our buildings. And Jason, you and I and the facilities manager have already discussed this. You know, I don't care if it costs us a couple $100,000 a year to maintain our facilities. I don't want to see another school board 30 years from now saying, oh, our buildings are too bad, we've got to give them away for pennies on the dollar and sell them off to other facilities that are going to use them as schools and churches. And then we spend millions more taxpayer money to build another building. I'd rather see us have a solid maintenance plan in effect so that we're properly managing the assets that our taxpayers have entrusted us with. So that's number one. And number two, I'd like to see if we could actually facilitate a tax decrease. According to my numbers, and Joy and I have already discussed this preliminarily, it looks like we're collecting 3 more mills annually than we actually need to cover our expenses. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
We'll discuss more when we see what the actual expenditures are.
Well, yeah, because you have to hold money back. We spend a lot of money on curriculum, but there's a lot more to be spent. The Chromebooks have to be replaced every 3 to 4 years. And as they were saying, it's not like you can just go out and buy books anymore. You need the technology for the curriculum. So, I mean, there's a lot to be considered.
Technology has its place, but books still have their place too.
Well,
You need to learn it up here before you can do it on here.
Yeah, but if you don't have a book and this is all you have to use for the curriculum, because there are no books.
I don't know. I like the library. They got lots of books.
That's not happening.
All right, other questions on the revenue projection?
No, I appreciate the presentation. It was well thought out, very nice and factual, and no status fumbling message. So that was very nice to see. Yes.
Moving on, item C. A Toshiba agreement to do some scanning. I need to be transparent here. Mr. Dave Bradley did a right to know on financial records, which are stored in 62, something like that. Accounting boxes. It's super difficult to access this information, answer the right to know. I think people know this is a lawsuit. And in the end, the judge said we need to provide the information unredacted. And Jason brokered the deal with Mr. Bradley and his lawyer, all FERPA information. And,
I have a question on that. Is it in writing?
Yes.
Okay.
that's good with Dave.
Well, yeah, because last deal didn't help up on that.
Our staff has been scanning and redacting these documents, and it's becoming quite onerous. And Jason has found that Toshiba, with an appropriate non-disclosure act, can scan all these documents in. And the nice part of it is that now, once all these documents are scanned in, they're available to the district, to the school board. Like, this is information that we had in boxes that we could never access, and now we will be able to access it.
Yeah,
And once it's released to someone and a right to know, it's public information.
yeah, the line would be actually, once these documents, once everything is digitized and searched in format, it actually all be loaded right onto the website for cost clarity. There's no reason not to, it's all there.
Do we get charged by the amount of gigabytes of the website or terabytes?
On our website,
On what we can
Probably.
charge for the website?
there probably is, but I wouldn't think, these files are not as large as what you might assume. They are actually, once they're all scanned and stuff.
I would assume we store them back here and just provide a link on the website.
Yeah, we're just being on the website.
There's no data being transferred.
Yeah, it's not being uploaded there, it's just a link to access.
Or
Yeah.
stored.
Yeah. And I want to give Mrs. Logan like credit, she kind of went out and found some different options in terms of being able to do this. And I will say, what this does is this will digitize all the documents. We still have to do the FERPA and HIPAA redactions, but that is much more highly manageable once they are converted to PDFs, because the scanning itself is
It's
a
time.
ridiculously laborious task. So, I would hope that we get this done and get moving forward and approve this as a board meeting. In the meantime, we are continuing the work of batch by batch.
I'm still a little ticked because I know there were hundreds, if not thousands of documents that he photographed himself and already has access to. And we're only supposed to supply what he didn't get. But is he gonna tell us what he got?
And the district should have documented everything they need to.
That's right.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's, go ahead.
No, I insist.
At the end of the day, Mr. Bradley filed for a right to know request. For whatever happened, for whatever reasons, this board, the school district, lost in court. We have a court order that says we need to do this. We need to do it. It's that simple. Jason, how long do you think it's going to take once we hire this company, if we hire this company, to scan the documents in? How long do you think it's going to take them?
It says in the proposal, I think for some reason I feel like it's 60 days. 60 days. Once we agree, I would guess that's the longer end, but who knows for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, somebody comes into my office and they want public information. They don't even have to fill out a form. Tell me what you want. If you're entitled to it, you're going to get it right then and there. I think a lot of this right to know law is, a pile of BS. was put in place in reaction to something else somewhere along the line. And now we all get to live with all these rules. When quite frankly, if somebody asks for something and they're allowed to see it, we should show it to them.
Well, one of the problems before was the costs that we were given to do exactly what we're going to do.
Because that was also with doing the redaction.
So 16,000 is quite a far cry from the cost that we're going for.
But the other,
Even for the scanning itself.
I don't remember the scanning being broken out.
It was.
The event,
No, I can go back, I'm sure I have it fine.
comments on this expenditure? Great. Moving on to item C, RFP for healthcare services.
Yeah, we'll be bringing forward a recommendation. We literally just got 2 proposals today, did a cursory review. I'm gonna be hesitant to share them.
I was gonna ask you if we actually got any. So.
Yes, we did get 2. We'll be putting together a side-by-side comparison with a recommendation at the board meeting, if you would like to get that approved so that we have time to move forward.
Questions on the RFP? Hearing none, item E, any public comment on the finance committee? Hearing none, moving on to 5, athletics. Item A, candidates for coaching manager. For extracurricular activities. Any comments or questions on that item? Hearing none, any public comment on the athletic committee? Hearing none, moving on to for 6, buildings and grounds. Item A, the summer workforce.
Yeah, so the summer workforce, Justin Smith is working through kind of putting together a plan for additional help during summer for the deep cleaning of buildings, maintenance things that go on. And this includes a couple of things. One, it includes participating in the workforce grant through Clark County, but that also has its limitations, and once it runs out, it's gone. And so you can't count on it for very long necessarily, depending on how much funding is there. Bringing in some part-time workers, whether they be part-time cleaners, some paraprofessionals could do this, cafeteria aides, all those sorts of workers, if they wanted to, could be part of being brought in as part-time cleaners in the summer. And then it also includes internal student hirings, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Where's that? Where's under personnel? But the idea there is that we would have, hire internally some student workers.
We've done that in the past.
Yeah. So make sure that
It's worked out very well.
yeah, make sure we follow all laws in terms of labor laws and things of that nature. But the idea there would be to be able to get them some of the tasks to free up some of our other people to do more complex or more responsible tasks, and all the way up so that
And they earn
more efficiency. And they earn some money. It's great. It's great. So it's great to hire within the community and kids who are looking for a part-time job.
Any questions on this item? Item B, All American Athletics. We've seen this before. This is the recoming of the gym floors that happens every summer. Any comments or questions on this item? Hearing none, moving on to item C. I think Jason has mentioned this before. This is the website.
Yeah, so we've discussed this publicly a couple of times on a couple of occasions. I've been asked for updates. So at this point in time, we have created an account on Municipal, which allows us to put items up for auction to the public at large. And we will be testing it out soon with materials that you have approved for surplus. The idea here is we may be able to recoup some revenue instead of something being thrown away or going through a sealed bid process where, quite honestly, you could buy a truck for $200 if nobody else bids on it, and that's nowhere near the market value. The nice thing about municipal is that actually allows us to set a reserve price on some of those higher value items.
So you don't have to sell.
So you don't have to sell it unless that reserve price is hit. So we've been working through, kind of going through and putting a couple of things on and testing the waters.
Did Jeremy ever get back to anybody with the company that actually pays for electronics?
Actually found that. GERsolutions.net. I'll hit that to you in an email.
Yeah.
He just gave it to me the other day. Matter of fact, it was last Monday. So I apologize for not getting that to you. I just thought that since you use the other program, you may not have been interested, and I'd love to, actually get that.
So, and again, those are items that you could put up, certainly put on your spend. And there are, school districts who, buy a lot of things on municipal, quite frankly. There are a lot of people out there that look for things, depending if you have what they need, kind of like an eBay auction.
Alright.
So,
And the older stuff, maybe you can get to GER Solutions with.
Yeah.
I'll put you in touch with them. You guys run with it. I'll have nothing else to do with it.
Any questions on this? We know we've had some stockpiles here that are being used, so. Hearing none, moving on to item D, I think we'll be happy to hear that a proposal has been selected for the facade.
Yeah, we went through this process, we put this out, we put out an RFP. The Schrader Group's proposal actually has one price as a total package, so in terms of it is the best price when it's looking at a flat charge. There were some that had lower flat fees, but then also had add-ons that if you did the calculations, it ended up being more expensive. And they also addressed both phases of the project and the entire scope of service. We'll be recommending that for approval and hopefully getting a move on in terms of scheduling them to get on site and get started on the work. Nice to be close to tying them.
Well, the best time to do it, if it needs, there's expensive repairs this over the summer.
Yes.
Any questions on the proposal? Hearing none, moving on to item E, something Jason has been studying, a long-term facilities plan.
So to Mr. Gallagher's earlier point, I couldn't agree more. This is really important for budgeting purposes, for understanding what we do need to set aside. How much should we be saving? How much should be sitting in capital reserve? We really don't know until we know. And I want to make clear that going down this road of looking for a professional service to come in and do this sort of surveying of our assets is in no way, shape, or form an indictment on Justin Smith or his maintenance crew. The reality is that internally, we just do not have the capacity to get a study like this done and do all the other daily operations that we must do. It is unfeasible. So as we start looking at this, I think I want to say that and put that out there. The next slide, before I jump into the comparison of 3 different vendors with whom I've secured quotes, I wanted to update you on some potential legislation, both of which are sitting in committee currently. One is Senate Bill number 84, and this was actually introduced by Senator Arnold. And to the best understanding I have, this is actually being fast-tracked through the state Senate. And Senate Bill number 84 would actually require school districts to essentially go into do a complete survey asset and provide that to the state if they wanted to be eligible for future state-funded grant projects.
So are they gonna pay for it? No, I'm kidding.
Why? Do they pay for all of it?
Oh, yes. Well, if they would eliminate property tax and pay for it, there wouldn't be any unfunded mandates now, would there?
So, it is interesting though that this legislation is out there and I've spoken to a few people with a much better understanding of the process and a pulse on where certain bills are, who have indicated that they really feel like this one does have legs and it would require that sort of idea to be done every 7 years if a district wanted to be participating in state funded grants. So that's helpful to know. And the other one is House Bill number 726. This one does not seem as likely to pass the week, but that's coming out of the House and says basically, in order for the state to better fund capital projects across the Commonwealth, that schools would have to basically do a survey asset and kind of project what costs have they absorbed, what are they deferring, and what's coming up in order to fund those.
I mean, I get it with this House bill, but isn't that sort of like Plan On that they're not doing anymore?
Similar, I think my interpretation, interesting you say that, is it's a way for them to try to reinvigorate Plan On with a little bit more control over it.
So less money going to the district, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Especially since it's the House.
But the Senate bill is the one that's basically
Yeah, well,
looking very likely. So just wanted you to have that information. They are both sitting in committees respectively, but my understanding, fast tracking a little bit quicker in the state Senate is that bill number 84. So as we move on, I presented a slide here, secured quotes from 3 different companies, all of which I have to say, all provide a great platform. The database that is there, the information, the reports that can be run from those 3 websites are all comparable. It's hard to parse out which one's better. They all look very good and very usable, very user friendly. But what I did do is kind of put down the actual fees and some notes of things that are included in one or the other throughout. So if you see Master Library, the fee for professional services column, that's how much these respective companies are charging us to come and actually complete the assessment of all of our facilities.
and that's with the paper, them looking at the paperwork and everything too?
Yes,
Okay.
that's going, roofs to basements and then documents as well. And uploading all of that information and equipment.
And looking at all the files on,
Yes, gathering and doing as much of that as we can provide to them, yes. So that is a true comparison of that work there, and you see that ranges from 26,000 to 70,000. The implementation fee, you'll see that's a one-time cost. None of them are significant to consider. And then you see the annual subscription costs. And you see one that is much higher, but I will note there, I'll go back and note some things about SiteLogic that are.
yeah, but the professional service.
Look at everything they include. Yeah, and then the additional services. Now, I asked Mrs. Laviolette the other day, she's working on her superintendent eligibility letter, and I asked her to just do kind of an exercise of, I handed her the 3 quotes and said, take some time and review these and give me your notes on them and we'll sit down and talk about it. After I had already done so independently. And it was interesting where we both landed very similarly. It's like SiteLogic provides a much better deal, quite frankly, financially. It's $26,000, but there's a bump with that, right? So the idea here at SiteLogic, unlike Master Library and FMX, they make their money providing this service. But coming out and doing this, providing the service, that's how they make their money. SiteLogic, you see a much lower professional service fee, and then they say, even if you pay the $26,000 and you do one project with them, that $26,000 gets applied to that first project. Same thing, as long as you are engaged with them as your guaranteed energy services contractor, they waive their annual subscription cost, which is higher than the others. They also provide grant writing for projects at no cost if you're engaged with them as your guaranteed energy services contractor.
And what does it mean by energy services contractor?
So there are certain, it's referred to as GIZA, there are certain projects that fall under GIZA guidelines that qualify for GIZA guidelines. And so what happens is Windows, certainly, any window.
Oh, okay, so you're talking about physical things.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
because when I think of energy services, I'm thinking of, like, we're in the consortium for the natural gas. Okay.
No, this is like
that's
physical
what I'm-
projects. Essentially, SiteLogic wants to give you this website, wants to partner with you so they can get your business to manage projects.
Which is fine as long as they do a good job.
And so really, to me, and I would be happy, I want to hear from the rest of the board. I would recommend going with SiteLogic and saying, you know, here's the thing, we're not committed to any length of time. In fact, we're not even committed, if we sign that contract, to a full project. Is at any point in time, we can say, no, we're gonna go with somebody else. And the only difference then, at that point in time, is we still have our database and the cost is $8,000 more a year. But at that point in time, we can also pull our information from the database if we so chose and go with a cheaper company.
Well, even if we did, let's say project came up, we would still have to bid it out if it's any significant amount of money.
Not if it's a Giza project.
Oh, Giza.
Yeah, if it's a Giza project,
Okay.
then.
How does that sidestep the bidding process?
What's that?
How does that legally sidestep the?
I'm not exactly sure, but I do know that it is, you can engage them as a contract, you put out an RFQ and you go from there.
So during your research for this, I'm assuming you went to other districts to see who they spoke well of SiteLogic?
Yeah, I spoke to 2 different districts. One of them is about an hour and a half, about 2 hours northwest of here, north of Williamsport. And they started, and it's amendment by amendment. So after one project, if you're not happy with it, you move on. That's eyes, you say, no. Their board has continued for the past 2 years since they started building project to project because they've been happy. And then I spoke to another that basically said the same thing. They do a nice job in terms of managing projects. The reality, you're not gonna, their business model is they go out and help you find the funding to pay themselves.
Right, I was looking at that.
Which is fine anyway.
It's a smart business model.
Right, at least they're finding the funding.
At no cost to us to
Exactly, you don't have to look at it. Now, the other thing was, you're sure that all the information will be handed to us at the end of this, like, you know?
We may have to pull it off,
Okay,
but we could do so because all the database.
just making sure. We got involved with a couple of IT companies that, I mean, the last one was great. They actually gave us every single bit of information that they used, but we've had others that have not. So I'm just making sure that that's somewhere in the contract.
I can't guarantee, at this point in time, I can't guarantee that they could just turn over a spreadsheet. The nice thing is they manage the website for you. The others look for you to make the updates.
Right.
Which then, you know, one of the things that costs the most money, quite frankly, in these types of things is transitions. Whether that's the transition of a board, transition of a business manager, transition of a superintendent. Things get lost by the wayside. So to have things housed, like I've been on this for a while, and then I look and I go, okay, so the downside to this is you're committing to saying, okay, if we have a project, we're going to give you a shot at doing the project. The one that comes out, I mean, right now, we'll have, you know, the board has talked about alternative ways of grant writing as well. This is one. They'll go out and try to find competitive grants that help offset some of the cost or things that come up if they fall under a Giza project.
And if we get the grant, they get 4%.
Now, actually, if they're a contractor, they don't take any money out of the grant.
Oh, I mean, yeah, but they can find other grants that we're not doing projects on, and then they would get 4%.
Yes.
Correct.
Maybe they can create projects by finding grants, and we'd be happy to let them do the work.
Yeah, I mean, the window for the public facilities improvement grant is going to be opening, I believe, in May. And that's something we've been preparing for here as a district. We've been looking at one thing that either has to be a bunch of things in one school, to the best of my understanding, a bunch of things in one school, or the same type of thing in multiple schools. And one thing that jumps out at me we do have some paving projects that are probably overdue. I'm looking at the middle school. Those parking lots are pretty, yeah, one of them, two of them in particular are pretty rough. And then even the student parking lot at the high school, is, you know, I think, I'm not sure when the last time that was done, if it was done. What's that? When it was originally done? 1990. That's what I was guessing as I drove around there a couple days ago.
Well, they did a good job.
They did a great job in 1993. Yes, but it's also showing its.
Have we ever had it sealed?
Probably
I
not,
don't remember that being done.
Wow.
Nope.
probably not.
And the motivation for them to come and do this work, cataloging and documenting our facilities is because then they use that to do the grant writing. Now they have a body of information to write a compelling story when they chase a grant. So it's a smart business model.
All three of these do a nice job of administration being able to utilize it to run reports for capital planning, capital improvement planning. So as we're looking at what needs to be done this year as a preventative maintenance, you can run those reports and you can defer things. You can, you know, it'll give you kind of like, this is critical, it should be done immediately.
Well, we were given, and I'd have to find it again. We were given a document that had a list of projects on it.
Yeah.
And when they should be done. But that wasn't a comprehensive, somebody came in and looked and this is gonna need to be replaced this year, you know?
Yeah.
And you're getting, I mean, did we ever do anything? I don't remember doing anything about the middle school, just went out of my head. But the issue we had at the high school, where, not the heating, jeez, God, I can get those.
for the cafeteria.
No, I'm talking about the
Regular.
the electrical, you know, if all the power goes out.
No, generally,
But wasn't there an issue with the middle school
Yes.
generator?
yes, and that still has not been resolved.
Okay.
During insurance claims.
I mean, because that's probably, what, 50 years old? No,
Yes.
kidding, but close to it.
So if we didn't think we were gonna do a project with SiteLogic, then master library is actually like the better deal over long term. Like that's what I was calculating, like if we stuck with any one of these groups for say 5 years, master library.
Yeah, but have you figured into that, hiring somebody to chase competitive?
No,
rates?
I'm not making an argument. I'm just saying, like, if we decide here that we want to use SiteLogic, I think we have to think that we're going to be doing at least one project.
Well, I'm sure the project's gonna come up.
Right, but necessarily, I wouldn't even know that we're voting, so people aren't surprised later, like, oh gee, I didn't think we knew the project, but.
Yeah, and the projects are, again, maintenance or energy upgrade projects. They're not, you know, it's things that we would have to do
Well,
anyway.
and we know that we're gonna have to pay for it.
So Jason, is this all on the agenda because you're asking the board that at the voting meeting, you want to move forward on this time?
I would like to recommend SiteLogic, given the services that they provide. I think it ticks a couple of boxes. I came in very, very concerned about making sure that we have a responsible long-term maintenance facilities plan. That is comprehensive and exhaustive, because the biggest waste of money in public education at times, quite frankly, is due to deferred maintenance costs.
Well, that's why we have a $38 million elementary center, is it not?
So I'm gonna pull forward on that.
That's right.
I'll start with you, explain SiteLogic.
It sounds to me like that's the best option. Jason, I agree with your judgment on this. I think it's the way to go. You know, we're going to be making maintenance improvements of these facilities. I am not in favor of just kicking the can down the road so that we end up with problems for either the future of this board or future boards to deal with. If we don't have a comprehensive maintenance facilities plan in place, I think that's a serious problem for planning in the future.
Jeremy?
I think we should. I think that's a great endorsement and from Jason and the fact that they provide so much for such a low cost. Makes sense.
Okay, very comfortable.
Part of that.
Rusty? Good. Great. Move on, public comment on buildings and grounds. There are none, moving on to part 7. Item A, candidates for employment. Comments or questions on Jim Potts? Moving up. Item B, candidates for substitute list, Libby Smith. Comments or questions? None. Bird C, this is what you were alluding to, Jason. Summer student workers job description.
Yes, we'll ask for approval on this and then we can, after the next meeting, we can post, and get some students, support those and some helping us in the already as well.
Comments or questions? Hearing none. Item D, professional job description. Comments or questions on that? Part E, some administrative job descriptions. Any comments or questions on that?
I'd just like to take a minute, and kind of provide kind of a framework for these. Obviously with Mr. Figueroa's retirement, it was kind of looking at what are the district needs, and how do we allocate resources to best support students and teachers in the district. And, the director of academic programs and technology would be a job description of really kind of the parts of Gretchen's job that she's been doing, and then combined with some of the responsibilities that Mrs. Figueroa had specifically around curriculum development, working with teachers in that capacity and professional development. And then the other position is an elementary principal of academic interventions and achievement. I have been very consistent by saying, if we do not address the academic needs early, we are not going to make the gains that we all want to see for our students in terms of growth and achievement. Our growth scores across the district are actually very strong. So I want to give teachers a lot of credit for that. But if you have strong growth year after year and your achievement is still not on par or still not above the state average, it's saying that students are coming really far below. That you can make consistent growth academically and still not be at the state average or above the state average. I'm not okay. Mr. Dollar said something a couple of weeks ago.
Well, the state average is pretty crappy.
And
A lot of.
yes, I want to be at, I truly think it's a reasonable goal to be at 75 to 80% proficiency in third grade math and third grade ELA. I do not think that is out of the realm of possibility. And I think that's what we should be gunning for. And that means we have a lot of work to do in K through 2. We understand there's going to be a little bit of attrition throughout the years beyond third grade. But if we don't have a very strong starting point, we will never be where we all desire to be.
The younger the child, the more the brain is like a sponge. The
Absolutely.
faster they learn, the better they learn. So if you can meet them where they're at and
just like I said earlier, this
Well,
is,
I mean, 5-year-olds should be learning a second language because they just pick it up. At 5 years old, I could speak German fluently. Because my aunt from Germany, who was German, would come and spend the summers with us. And I don't remember hardly any of it now, but I was literally fluent in German.
yeah, this is not, again, I'll say this is not an indictment against Mr. Settler or Mr. Navala.
No.
They are administrators, 2 of them in a building of about 1,000 students. And I take this back to the same way that I framed the movement of teaching positions from the middle school to the elementary center. If you simply look at proportionate numbers and how they impact students, every other building The high school is about 600 students and has 2 administrators. It's 300 students for every administrator in that building. And then you look at the middle school, they have about 450 students and 2 administrators. That's 225-to-1 ratio. And the elementary center where we can have the most impact with the most strategic steps to take has currently a ratio of 500-to-1.
Gee, I guess we expect a lot, don't we?
And I just believe that this is what's needed in this district right now, academically speaking. And you need somebody who is solely focused on following the data and creating plans and strategically thinking about how to leverage the human resources that we have along with the curricular resources we have to impact student learning and growth. I will be very, very involved in the development of this. I promise you. Because quite frankly, if we don't get this right, we're going to continue status quo. And quite frankly, I know there was some unhappiness around staffing moves, at least at the middle school. And I will fully acknowledge that can be difficult at times. And I equate actually their position to my impressions right now, because if anybody is taking on more of the workload here, I'm actually saying we need to go down to central office administrator. We need to go down and assistant to the superintendent, because that building of kindergarten through 5th grade needs more support in academics. So I completely understand that. This is what's needed at this point in time, in my estimation. And I hope that, the district will be fully supportive of this moving forward. When I say the district, I mean everybody, parents, teachers, board members, administrators.
Any questions from the board on this?
I think it makes the most sense, because if you lose them that young, you lose them for life. You really do. I mean, you see some of these students and they get so frustrated. I have some relatives actually who went to the school and trying to get one of those nieces back into wanting to learn. It's hard to do. And she ended up doing it, which is good. She's moving on, but she lost it probably around 3rd grade, and it was tough to get her back into it. So it's great.
Other comments?
Yeah, I fully support you in this move, Jason. I think it's the right move. We've got to get them while they're young.
All right. Not hearing any other comments, move on to item F. Some more bus drivers, purchase transportation, comments or questions? Hearing any resignations, we have 1 resignation. Comments or questions? Item H, we have 2 retirements. Comments or questions on it?
Yes, I don't think Mrs. Rupel should retire.
Gary, I'll second that, third that.
You're gonna be missed.
All the AI stuff, it's fine. It's fine.
I see 27.7 years here.
Yes.
That's great.
I was actually surprised to see on there, Ron, I thought you were a fixture.
Thank you, Mrs. Rubel.
Appreciate it. It's been an honor and pleasure to serve the district, for sure.
Other comments or questions? Anyone, any public comment for personnel committee? Hearing none, moving on to part 8A, Integra 1. Oh, this is our Cisco renewal. Comments or questions on that? Hearing none, public comment on technology. Hearing none, we're on to item 9, miscellaneous. Have the Item A, the IU's ballot. Everybody has to vote on committee members. And there's 6 candidates and 6 votes by the look of it.
So just put an X on each one.
No check mark, that's what it says.
Comments or questions? None. Item B is the PSBA delegate assembly. The last 2 years, Heather and I won. Doesn't have to be us. Other people can go. Anyone else interested in going to the delegate assembly? Hearing none, Heather, are you willing to volunteer again? One thing going at least 2 years in a row, we were able to observe how things have changed, which we reported on. All right, item C, the strategic plan.
Yeah, I just want to provide an update. This is, I mentioned this last month. This is a document that will be public facing and presented no later than June, but more than likely sometime in May. I have nearly completed a first draft. I will continue working through that. And then my actual plan is that in May, we focus on this, in June, start utilizing it immediately, because it's kind of the idea of hitting all realms of management of the district, and where do we want to go, and then what steps do we need to take in order to get there. So it's very goal driven in terms of it should drive our work. It should drive administrators' work. It should drive their teachers' work, and all of the impact of that it has on students in one regard, employees in terms of human resources in another, and then honestly taxpayers as well in terms of strategic plan for financing the district in a fiscally responsible manner. So I will be publicly presenting that. I would think at the May workshop, we still have some work to do, so at the latest in the June. We'll move on to learn update.
Yeah, just move on.
Okay. In terms of learning.
Sure, there's not much.
No, I actually, I'll update this one. But I do have, there's a plan action. I have a.
Yeah, okay.
I have a call scheduled actually for tomorrow, for Wednesday. It's good. I gave 2 time frames when I had open availability, and the solicitor handles learning within Foxtrot's child said that he would call me.
Okay, because I found it interesting that they said, I forget how we phrased it. But when I read the statute, it did not say that you could say that if the property was sold, you know, that learner goes away. It did not say that in the statute, the actual statute, at least not that I found. And then the last update from the solicitor was they recommended something like that, which is what I had against the boroughs, because they had that in there, and I couldn't find it in the statute that said you could do that. So
the initial response I got last week was circled around the idea that we would not, it is not typical for a school district to pass their own resolution that they join with the municipality.
gotcha. Well, I am definitely against the entire township.
So we will speak further though, and I will have more information.
I mean, I could see areas of 443 starting there, but when, and I don't know, can you limit it to 5? Because I think there's, if I remember, their ordinance said there could only be 5 a year. So, I mean, that's just another question to ask when you talk to him.
Yes.
Maybe you're debating for discussion, but has everyone had their say?
Just that as a call and with whoever at Foxtrot.
Schedule those in either tomorrow or Wednesday.
Okay, great.
Because I was surprised that there was any.
Other comments or questions on this item? Hearing none. E, the traffic light.
It's PennDOT, so.
No official update, but I will say that Janine and I did meet with Representative Heffley to try to get some support in moving that forward. And we're, it's still in the throes of that. There's a multimodal grant window that we will probably look to apply for to help offset costs. Should we be fortunate enough to get that? I'm pretty sure it would still be tied to whether or not the project has been approved. So that's the challenge as it is.
They're going to this item. So, just kind of as we've been doing things in previous workshops, I have people that are bringing concepts forward. The next 3 items actually came from a spreadsheet that I got from Jeremy, and he had collected suggestions from board members more than a year ago, I think. And these 3 items were under Heather's name. I think Heather, you had an interest in having us study how we can bring industrial tech back to the middle school, maybe by seeking donations or, some type of support from the private sector to restore that.
What do you mean by industrial technology?
When middle school used to go to industrial tech class with bandsaws and different equipment.
Oh, okay, so-
projects.
All
That.
right, so it's shop class.
Yeah. Industrial tech. No, we did get the opportunity to go and see it with Mr. Everett, Julie, and I went around and walked there. The space is still there. However, we do need to do a lot of revamping and figure out what we're going to use for storage. So I would like to move forward with that because Mr. Everett had said that he had spoken to other teachers, even at the high school, that do miss having that because it did benefit the students coming up to the high school.
The other whole, like, all the equipment is gone.
I'm sure. I mean, it's been going for how long?
But so, we would need some type of funding to restore the equipment that's no longer there. And in the long-term
And there
sense.
goes the $12 check that we're gonna get back from our taxes.
Okay, so then that's more important than even $12.
You mean wood shop though?
Yeah.
Not metal.
No, just.
I think it would be, I think it's a great idea. There's a great space there. And I'm not sure necessarily that, I think we should take our time
But we just restored, I know they don't call it OMAC, but we just restored OMAC this year.
No,
last year.
I think it's worthwhile to design what we wanted to do before we launch into how we're funding it and what we're gonna buy. And I think, the conversation around what the curriculum framework look like, it might not be as expensive as replacing all that equipment. Do 8th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders necessarily need the equipment, the bandsaw, or do they need to work on general, simple circuits, simple measurements? It would be interesting to get the input from our teachers and some external folks who have head these things up. And maybe design what we want it to look like locally before we say, no, we're gonna pay for it.
And we also have to have a teacher that can either cover it or hire somebody, and that is usually a very big.
That might be the
expense.
long-term.
That's the long term, that's the structural that thing.
What you're saying, Jason, is like, let's have the teachers brainstorm what this could look like, instead of just saying like, oh, all of us old geezers remember what wood shop was like, and let's just recreate the paradigm when there could be a great, better idea out there that's more modern.
Well, if they make the coat tree again, and they make the legs on the bottom longer so they don't fall over and break the hooks.
If I recall, during that walkthrough, Steve said that, he was all willing to go down this road, but he wanted to gauge how much interest the board had in it before he was going to go down that road.
Well,
So-
that's what it looks like. I would think.
Right, so, I'm interested in taking a look at it or finding out more about it, or any ideas teachers may have.
And I wonder if we could secure some kind of corporate sponsorship. I mean, look, the worldwide headquarters of Air Products is only, 30 miles from here. So always possible. Let's take a look and see what the needs are. But I like the idea of a shop class. Let's teach the kids something to do with their hands as well.
Glad we're on the same page. I had that same thought.
So it sounds like the board agrees that we're gonna have Jason move forward, work with staff to do a brainstorming session, and then you will report back to the board and see what types of ideas.
Absolutely, not that I have. That the group has. Yeah, I think,
The staff.
yes, I think it's definitely something that if we start garnering some ideas and take our time and really kind of pinpoint, okay, well, what does this do exactly for kids? What does it lead to potentially in high school, whether that's here or whether that's in CCTI? Or how does it just give them some basic life skills that they can apply every day for the rest of their lives? And kind of go through that. And then think about, I would be cautious. I would say, let's not plan on like getting another dust collector installed, because I don't think those are the things that we necessarily need at this point in time. Agriculture here is obviously very, very important. You can learn a lot about agriculture on a smaller scale. I think that there are ways that you could design courses that really make a lot of sense, that are not terribly expensive to fund at the start until you start to generate more and more interest.
Yeah, when we have to buy a combine, that might be a little.
Correct.
And I guess it could go hand in hand with the other class that's right down the hallway that you took us to, where they have the fish in the room and everything.
It is very much thinking about STEM from another angle.
Yeah, possibly do some interaction with both groups. One can create something, the other can make something grow in it.
Yeah. Cool. I see one of our teachers here at Ag Ed, I believe, from Tech Ed. So I'll be reaching out to you and your group, and we'll kind of start having some discussions.
If I can just chime in, and I'm surprised that Mr. Cook is staying as quiet as he is, because he and Mrs. Favora in November worked on a grant application for PA Smart Advancing Computer Science and STEM Education, specifically for a middle school tech program. We have not heard anything back yet. We keep checking on it. It says that it's submitted for peer review. I did email the contact over the weekend just to see if there's any update. But that is maybe in the works.
I have to ask the question, how was that grant written? Because was it written to, my concern is to write a grant for a program that yet does not exist, unless if you already know exactly what you want it to be. Because usually grants, there are strings attached and you have to follow the outline that was submitted. And that might not provide, I would rather us figure out, we want this. And I'm not saying it isn't there, but I have not seen it. So I think that's important to think about, because if you run a grant a certain way and you're giving money, well, now we've just established what it is, and there's no flexibility.
You have to follow
There's no
that.
flexibility until that grant money's gone.
Yeah, just, and again, Mr. Cook will probably speak a little bit better to this, but glancing at it, it looks like it was kept quite vague. Perhaps in a good way, that it's essentially exposing the students to STEM and technical education. And so then I see the goal, 80% of students enrolled in tech ed at the middle school will report that the program increased their interest in agriculture or STEM careers. So again, it doesn't look like it's too specific.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Vaughn and Mr. Cook went and met with Mr. Everett back in late fall, and then board, this is the board. It's great. Other discussion weeks later? Right. G assessment data reporting, if I recall correctly, the item was that you wanted to hear more about the SAT scores and how the staff, the administration is using that to improve student outcomes.
I'll take the word for it, because that one I do not recall.
That's what I'm talking about. So, so my thought on this is when I was reading it, Jason was like, when do the PSSA scores come out?
Typically, they come out, early July.
Does it make sense, I mean, for there to be like a presentation of the board?
Well, don't we have our own assessments that we do here?
Yeah, we have, so it's a little scattershot right now. Next year's gonna be a little, it's gonna be more consistent. Every building has something slightly different, yes.
But I mean, we could at least get an update where, you know, because we know that, we're making gains.
We can certainly have an update sooner. I guess what I was thinking was like, maybe we could set up like an annual process where every year we receive the scores, but at the same time hear the game plan from the staff, like how they're doing the scores.
Don't they usually, once they get the scores, then they take a little bit of time to go through them and.
Right, yeah, that presentation may not happen.
Because I think we get that.
After the scores.
I think we get that in like September, no?
Okay. So my plan would be, a July board meeting for, there are ways that you can disaggregate the results a lot more efficiently. There's actually a program out there called Next Day Data, which is free to use. Another IU hosts it, and anybody can participate in it. All you have to do is upload it without the student names. They disaggregate the data. They tell you exactly how you performed on each standard, each recording category, overall by grade level. Over successive years, you can actually follow cohort's progress from year to year to year in each subject. It even breaks it down for you, like how they did specifically on their TPAs.
However, would that be free?
Because somebody really brilliant created the spreadsheet.
No, I get it.
And now you just dump it in. No, it's fantastic. And we will be utilizing it this year. So literally, we'll have this some level, high level of disaggregated data that could be board reported by the end of July, as long as we get the results in early July. Literally, it takes 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
It comes back to you, get a spreadsheet.
Just data entry.
Yeah, and it spits it right back to you within an hour. Now, in terms of building level and teacher level, that's where you get a little nitty gritty because you're parsing students out by section and seeing third period, how did they do? Well, who did they
I
have?
don't think we need to get.
The board does not need that now. So that high level data, I would anticipate July. The other big major component is, other than that's the achievement score, right? Those are your achievement scores that you get in July. That doesn't tell you the full picture. It's good. It's good information to have. And, you know, we want to know that and really focus on it. That gives you kind of big picture, almost curricular areas. Like, are we spending enough time on the keystones? Are we spending enough time on cells in high school biology? Or is there one area where we're rocking it to a point where we're so high and another area where we're not? So how much, then you go back to your curriculum maps and look and see how much time is it proportionate? Can we make adjustments? But then in the fall, and I'd like to say this is early November, the state always, I don't know.
Well, it's the states that we get it.
But usually in early November, you get the growth scores. And to me, these are critically important too, in terms of helping to support teachers, specifically in their individual classrooms for our, you know, our administrators going and having those conversations. And again, growth, achievement is a lagging data. It is the result of year after year what has gone on in my child's academic life. Whereas growth tells the story of one particular classroom in that year. And to me, you know, growth, if you have high growth year after year after year, you should begin to see achievement catch up. So those are two different major data points, and then as mentioned, that are more localized assessments of norm reference criteria and criterion reference data. Those will be giving it in terms of each week. I think what you'll see is Ms. Flaviola is working on an assessment plan for next year That will be presented to you in July. And what we can do then administratively is actually produce for you a sort of anticipated calendar of when we would present a data set and what data set it is, and when you could expect to see some of it. I think that's quite reasonable if we can do that and work it in, because that data calendar will sort of drive those components across the district. And then likewise, it's sort of aligned to our professional development days. The teachers actually have purposeful time to sit and look at that data. Likewise, we can kind of give you an estimated time frame of when we would be presented. Is that helpful?
Other comments or questions on this item? And then item H, the school safety reporting. I think you remember that one better.
Safety said, we go back to the monthly reports, but when I asked for a breakdown by the school, for more resources, it would be educational presentations should be utilized to help the students.
Middle school.
Absolutely.
Safety reports.
If there's any way to get some historical data on that as well, because we were asking Jack for that for quite some time, and I don't know why he never provided that. That was something that we were being provided, that when Jack came on board, it stopped being provided. It's very helpful for us to gauge the growth, the safety of the kids in each school. And
Month to month, it was interesting to see.
yeah, if you can get the historical data, that'd be great.
I'll do my best.
And we only really need it for 2024. Because we had it before that.
Other comments or questions? Okay, item I, elementary center guidance curriculum. Isn't good.
Yeah, the conversation around, are there sort of programs, frameworks that really are designed to help students build certain skill sets like resiliency,
I
leadership
remember.
skills?
This was my item.
Yes.
You just read different words, so I totally didn't recognize it. Yeah, I talked about how can we introduce soft skills into the elementary school to help children solve problems and be more resilient. And you asked me if it was like an explicit or implicit thing, and I said explicit. And then you had encountered a program previously that you thought was really great.
Yeah, I have some experience implementing Second Step as a guidance curriculum. It's kind of a pretty famous, pretty much the gold standard. There are some others, and I don't have as much experience with them, so I'm not saying Second Step is the only one that would do well. They sort of develop age appropriate activities and units that sort of circle back and spiral throughout their years. Some other schools have done things like the Leader in Me, and I know the elementary center does a little bit of that. And there's no reason why the two things can't work in conjunction, so let us know. Yes.
It's like explicit emotional intelligence type stuff, like instead of just teaching about, math and science and the hard things, it's more about like interpersonal skills and how you approach problems and I think definitely in an area where we have people struggling, that could be super. So Jason has suggestions. I think the question of the board would be, do you guys agree to have Jason look into that some more and bring a proposal to the board? I'll start with you, Dwayne, on the whole board.
Well, I think for here and now, having the redistribution or reallocation of resources from the middle to the elementary center is going to be a tremendous help. I personally would like to see where that goes before we start looking at another set of curriculum. I'd like to see what they advise. as a result of this new position and more resources in the elementary center. That's just my opinion.
Wouldn't the interventionist focus on specific children, or is this would blanket all children, or am I wrong?
Yeah, interventionists would be following the data to identify students who certainly need different supports, academically speaking, but there's also, if that job description, there are some in there that are behavioral, behavioral, that's not the heavy focus. This would be like every student gets a lesson per cycle or week or whatever.
So we have guidance counselors in elementary school.
So it's like, do you want to teach a child?
It's been a long time since I was in elementary school.
I know, but do you want to teach a child skills before they have a problem, or do you want to wait until their life is screwed up and then they go to a guidance counselor and then they learn a lesson after the fact?
I agree with you. Get the kids while they're young, but when I was in college, I worked as a bouncer in psych. I'm not going to tell you my opinion of some of these psychiatrists.
I think one of the main things we have to realize is that not all parents have the time or put in the effort to teach their children how to deal with certain situations at home. And if we can do that for those who don't have that opportunity, I can see where that's a bad idea.
I think it's a good idea because I think that, stuff happens at school, where kids don't necessarily tell their parents about. And, you know, it might give them, and it will, like you said, the idea is to give them skills early on. Like, I mean, you do learn a lot in kindergarten, how to share, not to bite people, but I mean, this goes beyond that.
Sometimes.
But I mean,
I've been out with quite a person here.
but yes, I do, like I said, there are kids that stuff happens to when they don't come home and tell their parents. It's true. And, you know, maybe we would have less bullying. It's true, you know, as they get older, if they are just, you know, I mean, teachers can only do so much. You know.
Unfortunately, Southampton schools only do so much, and Jason and I were talking last night. One of the things I brought up, and I've mentioned it a couple of times over the years, is a parenting class for parents and teach them to deal with these issues. But I
have some of that.
I mean, you know, yes, but that's a little bit different than what I was thinking of, but it would have to be a whole pro. I mean, I'm not against anything that's gonna help kids. I really am not, so.
Let's see.
Either way, I agree with what Dwight's point, I agree with Barry's part. I think it's to be useful, but I don't know if we really need right now, so don't really know right now.
Okay.
But why don't we take a step of getting a couple of different resources to look at and begin to review and provide for review and kind of take that step.
Yeah, study the idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Pandemic response information. It's kind of a rehash from last time. I think Wade had mentioned that there's already an organization in Carbon County. I think Jason, you had told me that Sue had some thoughts about, sorry, did you know it was going to call? Did she know it was going to
She
call?
forwarded us information.
Oh, okay. Maybe just.
Well, it's out here, it's an attachment here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, I don't remember seeing this when I went over the. It may have been there and I just didn't notice it.
This might be a meeting from when I first got on board. I remember seeing this a long time ago for some reason. So.
Well, it's the Carbon County emergency.
Right, I think we discussed this before. It looks very familiar.
Is that what you were talking about, the Carbon County Emergency Management Agency?
Yeah, the Carbon County Emergency Management Agency is really good at overseeing any type of emergency. I really like what they do and how they do it. They take a very common sense approach. They have the LEPC, the Local Emergency Planning Committee. I've been involved with that for 30 years. My whole point with especially the mountain out of a molehill approach to the pandemic from 5 years ago. I want to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
Well, that's just unfortunately common sense.
Well, yeah, common sense went out the door because some yahoo in Washington decided that he was science.
Well, not yet, but he's going to be prosecuted for that now.
Good.
Okay, so let's dial this back. So when Sean originally brought this up, he just wanted to know whether or not the district was part of an emergency plan, you know, that this facility or staff could be useful. And I think the answer is yes, that they're already part of
Well, and
the system. So,
And they have had, the county has had emergency response drills where the school district has been involved.
right, and our buildings are part of emergency response too. I mean, we just, only a few months ago, we took care of that.
Yes, the American Red Cross, and just, I did reach out to Zach Gilbert, and just saying, you know, hey, if there's any way that we can help, but we're not doing, and I kind of pled my ignorance to him and said that I started in December, I don't know what role was.
You know what, there's gonna come a time where you can't use that anymore.
Yeah, I don't know whether or not we were involved in next month.
Just.
December 16th.
18.
So I wanted to kind of close the loop. I wanted to just close the loop and say that, you know, that Sean had a question and I think she got the answer. And thank you for sending this to Jean sent it. So.
And Janine put a lot of it together. So I want to thank her as well.
Thank you, Janine.
And thank you even more for these lovely.
I know.
You got 40 already.
It's falling apart. It's hard to tell.
And maybe Steve shots again.
Any public comment to end the meeting? Hearing none, and B, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned at 9:07.
Seesaw.